At 5:29 a.m. on August 29, 1949, a mushroom cloud rose silently over the deserts of Kazakhstan. American intelligence planes detected radioactive particles in the atmosphere days later. Until that moment, Washington believed the Soviet Union was at least a decade away from building an atomic bomb. They were wrong. Terribly wrong. Somewhere inside America's most secret project, someone had betrayed the West. Just 4 years earlier, the United States had unleashed the most destructive weapon in human history on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. More than 200,000 people were killed by the end of 1945. And in the ashes of Japan, a terrifying truth emerged. Whoever controlled nuclear weapons controlled the future. President Harry Truman believed America had a monopoly that could secure global dominance for years. But inside the shadows of the Manhattan Project, thousands of scientists, engineers, and military officers worked across secret sites in Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford. The operation was so massive that many workers didn't even know what they were building. And that was exactly what made it vulnerable. This is where the story gets interesting. In 1943, a quiet German-born physicist named Klaus Fuchs arrived at Los Alamos. Brilliant, reserved, trusted. To American officials, he was a refugee escaping Nazi Germany. But behind closed doors, Fuchs was already working for Soviet intelligence. He wasn't alone. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, had spies buried deep inside Western governments for years. Stalin knew one thing. If America kept nuclear superiority, the USSR could eventually be blackmailed, isolated, or destroyed. To him, stealing atomic secrets wasn't espionage, it was survival. So Soviet handlers launched one of the most successful intelligence operations in history. Klaus Fuchs passed detailed bomb designs to Moscow. Not rough ideas, exact calculations, trigger mechanisms, plutonium implosion data, information that would normally take years of experimentation to discover. Soviet couriers secretly transferred documents through coded meetings in New York and Santa Fe. But what happened next? No one expected. Another spy emerged from inside the operation. A young American named Theodore Hall. He was only 19 years old when he joined Los Alamos, one of the youngest physicists on the project. Hall believed the United States should not have sole nuclear power. He feared a future where one superpower ruled the world through fear. So he secretly gave nuclear information to the Soviets too. The irony was chilling. Some spies acted for ideology, some for money, others out of fear. But together, they changed the balance of global power forever. And then, everything changed. When the Soviet Union successfully detonated its first atomic bomb in 1949, panic spread through Washington. American military planners had assumed they had time. Suddenly, they didn't. The Cold War transformed overnight from political rivalry into a countdown toward possible annihilation. President Truman immediately authorized development of something even deadlier, the hydrogen bomb. Unlike the bombs dropped on Japan, hydrogen bombs used nuclear fusion instead of simple fission. Their destructive power was almost unimaginable. The first U.S. test in 1952, codenamed Ivy Mike, produced an explosion over 10 megatons, hundreds of times stronger than Hiroshima. The nuclear arms race had begun, but behind the public fear was another hidden war. The FBI launched massive investigations to uncover Soviet spies. Suspicion infected American society. Scientists, actors, teachers, and government workers were interrogated. Careers were destroyed overnight. The fear became so intense that even weak accusations could ruin lives. And at the center of the storm stood Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. In 1951, the couple was accused of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union through a spy network connected to Klaus Fuchs. The evidence remains controversial even today. Some historians believe Julius was deeply involved. Others argue Ethel's role was exaggerated to pressure confessions. But America wanted someone to blame. In June 1953, the Rosenbergs were executed in Sing Sing prison by electric chair. They became the first American civilians executed for espionage during peacetime. Around the world, protests erupted. To some, they were traitors. To others, victims of Cold War hysteria. But the Soviet espionage network was real. Decoded Soviet cables from the secret Venona project later confirmed that Moscow had successfully infiltrated parts of the Manhattan Project. For years, American intelligence had quietly intercepted encrypted Soviet communications without revealing it publicly. It was one of the Cold War's deepest secrets. And yet, even with spies exposed, the damage was irreversible. By the mid-1950s, both superpowers possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy entire civilizations. Bombers carrying atomic payloads stayed airborne constantly. Submarines hid beneath oceans with missiles ready for launch. Military doctrine evolved into something terrifyingly simple: mutually assured destruction. If one side launched first, both sides would die. But this wasn't only a story about America and the Soviet Union. Britain had secretly contributed scientists to the Manhattan Project, expecting full nuclear cooperation afterward. Instead, after the war, the United States abruptly restricted atomic collaboration through the McMahon Act of 1946. Britain felt betrayed by its closest ally. So London decided to build its own bomb. France followed in 1960. China detonated its first nuclear device in 1964. Each country feared dependence on another power's protection. Nuclear weapons became more than military tools. They became symbols of sovereignty. But what happened next pushed humanity closer to extinction than ever before. In October 1962, American spy planes photographed Soviet nuclear missile sites under construction in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida. For 13 days, the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. American generals demanded airstrikes. Soviet submarines moved underwater near the blockade line. One Soviet submarine commander, Vasily Arkhipov, reportedly refused authorization for a nuclear torpedo launch during a tense confrontation. That single decision may have prevented World War III, and this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. While politicians publicly threatened strength, both Kennedy and Khrushchev privately feared losing control of events. Secret back-channel negotiations finally produced a deal. The Soviet Union would remove missiles from Cuba, while America quietly agreed to remove nuclear missiles from Turkey later. Publicly, both sides claimed victory. Privately, both sides understood how close they had come to disaster.